Welcome to QX Church. This is Pastor Scott Conway of Life of Adventure lesson number 2. Life of Adventure. A lot of people suffer from what we call when-then disease. And we miss our life of adventure. What when-then disease is that many people never give themselves permission to be happy, much less joyful. Because they always feel, well, when fill in the blank happens, then I'll be happy. When I get this relationship, then I'll be happy. But then you get the relationship. And you go, well, when we get a serious commitment, then we'll be happy. Or when we get engaged, when we get married. Well, after we really get on our feet. Or when we have children, when the children are finally old enough to be in school. When the children are finally grown up, when they finally move out, when they finally have children of their own, when I finally retire, if I can get this job, if I can get that job, if we can save up this much money, if we can buy a new car, if we can buy a new house. Again and again, people set themselves up that they don't allow themselves to be happy now. They don't allow themselves to be joyful now because it has to wait until when? It has to wait until when something else happens. It has to wait until when a certain amount of time passes. It has to wait until when you're done with school, when you graduate from college, when you get started on your career, when you get the next promotion. There's always something. Now, it's, of course, perfectly okay to set goals. It's perfectly okay to pursue goals. But to not give yourself permission to be happy now, because you haven't already gotten there, and then worse, as soon as you get there, or at least shortly after you get there, then to no longer allow yourself to be happy because you have to get somewhere else now. That's kind of sad. Now, of course, be joyful when good things happen. Be happy when bad things stop. Enjoy the pleasure of a vacation or the fun time with friends. Just don't wait until good times to have a good time. There was one woman that I was counseling at one time. For her, she recognized she had this pattern. And her pattern was that bad news was bad news. All right, good enough. And then no news was also bad news. Okay, well, that's a problem because a significant chunk of life is no meaningful news. There's nothing really particularly good or particularly bad that's new on most given days, most given weeks. But if something was bad, that was bad. That was something to be bothered by. If there was nothing going on, that was also something to be bothered by. Now, this is what made her situation particularly challenging. Is for her, good news was pending bad news. That if something good happened, all it meant was something bad was coming. If something good came, all it meant was it was there to be taken away. And so if she got really good news, she'd be happy for maybe 2 or 3 weeks. And then she's waiting for the bad news. And if the bad news doesn't come, she gets more and more nervous. Because the longer that bad news takes to come, the worse it's going to be. So sometimes when we reflect on our emotional patterns, we reflect on our lives, we sometimes see that we fall into some of these patterns. Now, part of the reason this woman fell into this pattern is that when she was a girl, there was constantly, a pretty steady stream of bad news. And what she often found out was the bad news that she found out about had already existed. It had just been hidden from her. So all that time there was no news. The no news was really the bad news being hidden in the background. Until it got so bad it couldn't be hidden anymore and someone would actually tell her what was going on. And then whenever she got something good, that her parents' first strategy was to take away the good things And sometimes fairly arbitrarily. It's not like she did something bad and got it taken away. It was largely just taken away based upon the emotional whim of the parents. If the parents were having a bad day, she was in trouble. And so she learned growing up that by the time someone gives you the bad news, that means that there was bad news that couldn't be hidden. But when there's no news, it means there's bad news being hidden. And when there's good news, it means someone's going to take it away. And that's how she grew up. Now, by the time she was a teenager, she got more and more control of her life. And once she got her own driver's license and she had her own friends and her own relationship, and these parents behaving this way no longer controlled her life. And that's no longer the way it worked. And then she became an adult, and she went to college, and she went to grad school, and she got married. And she's moving forward with adult life. She's recognizing, as she moved out of her childhood into her teens and then into her 20s, that she still had this emotional pattern like she was a child. And her parents were still doing this to her when that's no longer how life worked. And so she was having a particularly serious version of when-then disease. Because for her, it's like, well, when something bad happens, of course you're upset. And when there's nothing in particular going on, of course you're upset, because that just means there's something bad. And when something really good happens, I could be happy for 2 or 3 weeks. But then I have to be on guard again. I have to be on high alert, because I know bad news is just right around the corner. And there's been other people that I've worked with and that I've known who've had versions of this, where we seem to live in a culture that, for whatever reason, focuses on living in neurosis, focuses on being a victim, focuses on bad news competition. Well, I feel worse than you because. My situation is worse than yours because. And we give people permission to compete on the negative, but we don't give people permission to be joyful about other people's positives, which is kind of a sad state of affairs relative, it feels like to me, what it was like a couple of generations ago. Now, that might just be my personal observation and my personal experience, because obviously I don't know what's going on all over the country and all around the world. But there certainly are circles where we celebrate success, where we want the good news, where we don't feel the need to steal someone else's spotlight, where we want to be loving and encouraging and excited for people's good news. And we want them to tell us without the feeling like they're bragging. And that we give them permission to share your good news, share your praise, share what you're grateful for, share what you're thankful for. Because I want to share in your abundance. I want to share in your joy. I want to get to enjoy the adventures of your life. And sometimes your great adventures will help me through my hard time. Sometimes your great adventures just add to my great adventure. And we can have these great adventures together. So that when-then disease, though, that kills so much of our joy. So instead of trying to achieve in order to be happy, trying to get to a certain place and then you'll be happy, but then when you get there, you may or may not be happy at all. You may be happy only for a short time, but then now you have to get someplace new. Achieve happily. Achieve happily. Be happy as you achieve. So achieve happily, not achieve to be happy. You be happy about your achievement, but be happy as you achieve. Love, joy, and peace. We talked about this more last time, are parts of the fruit of the Spirit, not the fruit of achievement. You don't have to wait until you achieve something before you're allowed to love. You don't even have to wait until you have a relationship before you're allowed to love. You can love your friends, you can love your family, you can love people, you can be a loving human being without having an intimate romance. You can love other human beings without being married, without having children. You don't have to have that level of connection. You can just be a loving human being to the cashier, to the servers at the restaurant, to just people you run into day in and day out. You can be a loving human being on your social media. There's all kinds of opportunities to love and be loved. And joy, you don't have to wait until stuff to be joyful. And we're going to get into this in a little bit more in a moment. And peace and patience and kindness, all the fruit of the Spirit are spiritual matters. Not achievement matters, not status matters, spiritual matters. These are the manifestations of living life in harmony with spiritual things, which includes others, of course, principles, religion, and God. You show up with the fruit of the Spirit on the way to achievement, including joy. Be joyful even in hard times. Be joyful even in hard times. 2,000 years ago, this was the advice of James. And he starts off the book of James right after his initial greeting, beginning in verse 2. Consider it all joy, brethren, when you encounter many kinds of trials, knowing that the testing of your faith produces endurance. And let endurance have its perfect result, that you may be whole and complete, lacking in nothing. Now that's James chapter 1, verses 2 through 4. James observes that when we encounter a lot of different kinds of problems, if you have the King James, it's divers trials. Divers is a whole bunch of different kinds of stuff. Trials, tests, difficulties, challenges, however you want to word it. He observes that when we encounter a lot of different kinds of problems, it's a test. Your kid goes to school. A teacher hands your kid a sheet of paper that has a bunch of problems on it. And those problems have to be completed in class. It's either homework or it's a test, right? Either way, it's something to learn from or something to be evaluated on. Now, we say that tests are an opportunity to show what we do know and to find out what we don't know. And so when we encounter diverse trials, many kinds of problems, it's a test. What do you know how to solve? What do you already know how to handle? Can you do what you thought you could do? Are you who you thought you are? And very often when you take this kind of test, if you're a good student, you find out you got an A. Were you surprised that you knew as much as you knew, or did you know you were an A student? Or you got a B? Are you surprised you got a B? Or did you already know you were a B student? Did you think you were an A student? You found out you were a B student. Did you think you were a C student? And you just found out you're a B student. You know this stuff better than you thought. Or if you get a C or a D, or if you fail, and you thought you knew it, but you got an F. You found out you don't know what you thought you knew. You can't do what you thought you could do. Because you took a test, and the test told you that under testing conditions, when it matters under pressure, you can't perform. You need to know it better. You need to get more comfortable. You need to be able to go through the pressure testing of the exam. Maybe you know it fine when there's no pressure. Just like if you're watching a game show on television, it's easy to answer the questions when you're just watching television. It's a little hard to answer the questions when you're the one under pressure. I had one of my very first student on her very first test. She was testing for advanced white belt. She got up in front of him. She says, "Attention, bow. Sir, my name is..." And she forgot her name. Now, do you suppose that she doesn't know her name? Of course she knows her name. But it was the anxiety from the test. She needed to get more comfortable with the tests. She needed to be able to perform under pressure. As she learned in that split second, in that moment, I'm not that good at tests. I need to be better at tests. Count it all joy when you encounter many problems, because it's a test. Specifically, it's a test of our faith. Faith in the Bible is the substance of things hoped for, evidence of things unseen. We define this in more contemporary language as faith is the logical extension from what we do know to what we don't know for sure. So you have lots of information. You know what you know what you've done, you know how well you've done, but there's always extra variables when you're predicting the future. So every time you watch a championship fight, both of these fighters are ready for a championship fight. Both of them go in with some expectation that they at least have a good chance of winning and an anticipation that they will win. Very few people ever go into a fight knowing, well, I know I'm going to lose this one, but I'm going to go out there and get beat up. And that's what I'm here for. That's not generally what you do. When you get two Super Bowl teams competing in the Super Bowl, they're not usually walking in knowing, well, you know, we're going to get creamed in this game, but you know, but we're here. They go in trying to win. They know what they can do. And they take what they can do and they logically extend that to a belief in if we can apply what we know that we know into the unknown of the variables of life, the variables of competition, the variables of a game, the variables of a fight, the variables of trying to achieve a particular goal, the variables of trying to get a particular job or build a particular relationship or raise your children or get through a degree program, that you're taking what you know about yourself that is true and you're trying to apply it to something you don't know for sure, but you're anticipating what you think the outcome will be or at least could be. And then you go find out. Many kinds of problems give us a chance to show what principles we understand. To give us a chance to show what principles we understand so deeply that we can apply them to new and unique situations. Now, since so many of us are martial artists, is we're looking at, okay, what techniques do you know? Now, can you make it work? Can you make it work against resistance? Can you make it work against opposition? Can you make it work against someone your size? Can you make it work against someone smaller than you? Some techniques are actually harder to do if the person's smaller than you. Can you make it work against someone bigger than you? Can you make it work against someone who's stronger than you, heavier than you, has a longer reach than you? Can you start to apply it to these new situations, these new variables, and still make it work? Do you understand who you are, what you can do, what you can't do, what your strengths are, what your weaknesses are, what your limitations are, so you can show the principles you understand and apply them? And then you find out what principles you may still need to learn. You find out what principles you still may need to refine. What principles you may need to adapt. What principles you may need to just flat out change. You may find out that things just don't work the way you thought they worked. And you need to do something very different. Sometimes you just have to let go of your idea of a principle. It just doesn't work that way. You thought it did, but it just doesn't. And certainly even still sticking with the martial arts metaphor, a lot of times people find out the hard way that the technique that they learned only works in what we call a dojo technique. It only works when someone totally cooperates with you. And that maybe that's not something you want to try to do in self-defense. Or some of those things only work when someone will wait for you. And maybe that's not something you want to try to use in self-defense or in competition. That you don't have time to put your pieces together in the middle of a real fight. You might in the dojo, but just because you can go, okay, so let's see. So let's say I grab here, I move in here, I twist here, I shift under here, I turn, and okay, and there we go. I got it. I can do it. Well, that's not going to work very well for application. Can you just go, boom, it's done. And so sometimes you find that you just need to get better at your principle. Yes, you have all the pieces. Yes, it works. But it doesn't work the way you're doing it. You're going to have to fuse them together, and you're going to have to work on them and apply them. And sometimes when you're dealing with regular day-to-day life, it's exactly the same thing. That if you sit down in my office and ask you, well, tell me what happened and tell me what you could have done about it. That you might be able to break it down piece by piece and explain every piece. But in the moment where things are happening, your emotions get involved and it just goes out the window as far as you knowing what you're supposed to do and how you're supposed to do it. Even though afterwards you know. Maybe you know that good news is good news. Maybe you know that no news is no news. It's not bad news, it's just no news. There's good stuff and bad stuff always going on everywhere all the time. And just because you don't have the news doesn't mean it's bad. It just means there's stuff you don't know. Just stuff that's not going on that affects you right here, right now in this moment. And that only bad news is bad news. And even bad news might not just be bad news. It might be problems to solve. It might be diverse trials, the testing of your faith. And the testing of your faith produces endurance. That endurance to go through the process of continuous learning, always growing up in our maturity, always growing deeper in wisdom, and always getting in better harmony with more and more of God's creation. And this whole growing up thing, it doesn't end. I mean, my mother is 70. She's still some of those quips that she's trying to decide what she wants to be when she grows up. And what she means by that is she's still growing up. She's trying to figure out, well, what do I want to do next? What do I want to be a part of next? I've already done that. Sometimes she wants to do more of it. Sometimes she says, I'm done with that. On to the next thing. Continually growing up. Like, for instance, she's raised her kids. So she's grown up as far as the mother goes, and she's left that behind now. Now she's growing up as far as being a grandparent. The day will come where now she's trying to learn how do you do the two-generation thing of how do I parent my kids who are now the grandparents and coach and mentor them in being a grandparent while helping my grandkids be parents and supporting them in their parenting while being a great-grandparent to my great-grandkids. And that's coming. After she grows up a little bit more. In this particular case, she has to wait for her grandkids to get to the level where now that they're the parents. And then she can work on being the great-grandparent. And how do I parent my kids in grandparenting? And so you just keep on going. You just keep on growing up. The growing up never ends. And growing deeper in wisdom. Nobody is so wise that there's nothing more they can understand. Nobody is so knowledgeable that there's nothing else that they can learn. I mean, these areas are reserved for God alone. And God's creation is so huge, so vast, that none of us is in harmony with all of it. So there's always stuff to be learning. So you have joy in the struggle. Now there's an interesting thing. Over the course of the years, I've talked to several couples who have had their challenges, curiously enough, during their biggest times of success. And sometimes what's puzzling to them is how they got through the hardest of times. Why are they fighting now? Talking to couples where he was working and he was in grad school and I was the one home with the kids and I was still working part-time, and I'd get off work, I'd go pick up the kids, I'd be helping the kids with the homework, and he'd get off work after his full-time work, he'd go straight to school. When he came home, he was doing home. It was a tough couple of years while he got his graduate degree. And we made it through those years. I don't understand. Why are we fighting now? Another couple just starting out in ministry, working hard so that he could finish his seminary degree while he worked as a part-time pastor. Living in a one-room studio over somebody's garage that had no heating, no air conditioning, that had a very limited kitchen, that had a refrigerator, that they had to use a hot plate, and all these difficult times. And now he's a pastor at a church, he's got a good solid job, they live in a home, and wondering, why are we fighting now? How do we get through that insanely difficult time? But now that he's got a secure job, now that he's got full-time income, and now that he's got his seminary degree, why are we fighting now? How do we get through those times and we have so much trouble getting through these times? Well, upon reflection, many couples, many very successful couples, discover much to their own surprise that they actually had more joy in the tough times than they did after they got everything they thought they wanted. And there does seem to be a theme. One of the big themes is they were on the same page. They had the same vision. There was a clear joint goal they were both focused on achieving. And even when they're going through their incredibly difficult times, they knew where they were going. When he's only working part-time and he's in school and she's got her job, they know what they're after. They see the progress. He finishes another semester. He gets another set of grades. He's one semester closer to being done. Every test, every assignment, every paper that is written, that's moving toward this joint goal. And there's a certain amount of sense of achievement of one more step is done. One more step is done. This has an end. We're on our way. We know where we're going, and we can see that we're closer now. We know that this degree is going to happen. If we can keep taking these steps, this degree will happen at this time. And we can see all the sacrifices we're making is getting us there. And every step gives them just a little bit of happiness that they can see, one more step done. And both of them knew exactly what it was, exactly what they were working toward, exactly what they were sacrificing for. They both recognized the steps that were being taken, and they saw how it was moving them toward their joint goal. Another big one is they teamed up against the problems. They teamed up together with the problem as the enemy. When you live in particularly hard times, the most intense problems are commonly expected. So with the one couple, they knew, I'm going to be going to work. I'm going to go straight to school. My entire waking life is going to be work and school. I'm hardly going to see my wife. I'm hardly going to see my kids. And this is going to continue until I finish this degree. I understand that going in. And so when they encounter problems related to that, they already knew that was going to be the problem. And they already knew it's you and me against this problem, because we know it's coming. And she doesn't go to war with him over, well, you're never home. Well, of course I'm never home. We knew that was going to be the deal. So they team up as a team to deal with the problem. She already knew she was going to be going to work, and she's going to basically be a single parent. She's going to have a paycheck coming in from outside, but no one's going to be helping her with the kids. And yes, they outnumber her. Somehow they still need to get to their things. Now she has to handle all of the household tasks that used to be his. They used to have a very even split. They shared parenting duties. They shared household duties. If either one of them was gone for a while, that was fine. Both of them knew how to do everything. Both of them did do everything with some regularity. If she was gone for a couple of weeks to go see her family, that was fine. But now for 2 years, it's all on her. All of it. No more sharing. No more 50-50. No more two-parent household. She's going to do the single-parent thing for 2 years. And they knew that going in. So when you live in these kind of hard times, the most intense problems are commonly expected. You knew that was going to have to be the deal. And there's almost always in these kind of things an inevitable financial crunch for the couple whose husband was in the seminary. They know they have to pay tuition, and they know he's not going to be making that much money. For the couple with the husband getting the master's degree, they know they have to pay the tuition. Now, in their case, their income stayed the same, but their expenses went up. And there is a financial crunch. There is a need for mutual sacrifice. And when either side sacrifices for the other, they both know what they're sacrificing for. They both knew what they were after. And then when he did finally get his master's degree that gave him the opportunity to get a promotion, which he did get, and now they have more money because they're no longer paying tuition, and they have more money because now he has a promotion. And now he's back to 50-50 at home. Now he's back to co-parenting. And the financial pressure is doubly off because the tuition pressure is off because they have a major bill they no longer need to pay. And now there's more income, which is what they were working toward. And so they could provide more securely for the kids and for one another. So why success sometimes breaks teamwork? What sometimes happens after success is that some of these things change. They stop being on the same page. They have different goals, different desires, different ways they want things to look. It could be as simple a thing as she might have had this fantasy she entertained that, when we have enough money and when I have my husband back, we'll finally be able to go on a nice family vacation someplace. And that might have been her vision. Now, he may or may not have had the same or similar vision. They may or may not have even talked about it, but now he has a promotion. Now he has to do this new job, and he has to learn this new job, and he may discover, maybe even to his own chagrin, that I can't take 2 weeks off. Yes, I have the vacation time with the company, but I can't take the time off until I'm done with this first project I'm on, and because it's my first project, I really have to prove myself to keep this position. So no, we can't take that vacation this summer. And now there's a conflict in vision. Now his vision is, I need to cement my career. I need to show them that I really can do this job. Now I had the degree, so I qualified for it. They wanted me for the job. They did good at the other job. But, trying to learn this new job is tough. It's a lot of pressure, a lot of stress. And I can't take the time off this summer. And that might have been part of her vision of one of the payoffs we get is we finally get to go to Walt Disney World. And then that vision is dashed. They're no longer on the same page. They have different images in their head over what needs to happen and what comes next. Something else that often happens is they start to team up with the problems against one another. Or sometimes they create problems, intentionally or not, and they attack one another over those problems that they themselves created. And they start to battle with each other. They start to battle against each other rather than battle through the problems as a team. Sometimes through all the sacrifice in particular, they were such a good team when they had a defined enemy, a defined objective, a defined goal. But then when things get a little hazier, a little fuzzier, it's a little tougher to keep putting together. Now, some couples never have the teamwork of struggle. They never have the benefit of getting to achievement before they stop being on the same page. And they forget that they are partners, not opponents. At least one benefit of the couples that struggle through to get to a great goal is that they already know that they have the tools to do it right because they've done it before. They just need to put them back in play. So, a couple of obvious keys. Be on the same page. Have something you're both working toward that consistently requires something of each of you. Have something you're both working toward that the activities both of you engage in some meaningful way support or aim at that consistently requires something of each of you. Now, very often when you go through a process like this, it will be unfair if what you mean by fair is a 50-50 division of labor. It is rarely fair. Now, part of the reason for that is most of us are much more cognizant of the price that we pay than the benefit that we're getting. That's part of the manifestation of negative is 4 times more powerful than positive. And people just don't realize how much the other side takes to do unless you've been on the other side. It's also, though, occasionally stunning how often people don't realize how much or how difficult the other side is, even when they've been on the other side. So I've been the one handling most of the home stuff while the woman worked. I've been the one doing most of the work while the woman handled the home stuff. I've been on both sides of the equation. I recognize how hard it is on either side of that equation. And so I can be very accepting and very patient over what it takes to handle the other side, regardless of what the other side is. And then when both of us are working, and things still need to be handled at home, I'm also very cognizant of what that takes. And what a 50-50 division of labor might actually have to look like to make it all come together. And the fact it never feels like 50-50. It always feels more like it's 70-30 maybe. 80-20. Especially if the tasks that you're undertaking at home aren't the tasks that you enjoy doing, aren't the tasks that give you great satisfaction to do, but they need to be done, and someone's got to do it. Now, sometimes you have situations where one of you just loves to cook. All right, well, that's great. That person can do the cooking. Or one of you just loves to shop. Well, that's great. That person can do the shopping. But you can get to a place where sometimes it's getting so imbalanced that you have to pick up tasks that you really don't like. Now, sometimes it's fairly obvious things, like not very many people like to clean the bathroom. Not very many people like to do the dirty, grimy parts of keeping a house. They've got to be done. Some people love that, and God bless them. Invite them over to our houses more often, right? Let's just find them. They can have a business handling all of that. And then there are people who do. I mean, there's services that will come, do your cleaning, and you can specifically leave the tasks for them that are the things you don't want to do. But part of being on the same page is have something you're working toward. Set a goal big enough to inspire both of you. So you want to get there. So no one's being punished into their work. It's not pay a price or else. You better do this or else, period. Set a goal with a clear enough plan that both of you know exactly what is required of you to get there. Now, it might be some, wonderful, positive plan like, hey, let's take that Walt Disney World trip. It might be something as simple as, let's get out of debt. It might be something as simple as, let's build our finances to the point where when the bills show up, we can write checks to pay off these bills. But whatever it is, have a clear picture in mind. It might be a relational goal that may not cost any money, but a place you're trying to build your relationship to. And what does that look like for you? But whatever it is, set a goal with a clear enough plan that both of you know exactly what is required of you to get there. A big key, of course, besides being on the same page, is team up against problems. Be a team. When you have inevitable problems, always be on the same side against the problem. The problem is the problem. Now, this seems to be a manifestation of modern culture that we seem to get in this going to war with the problem against somebody else. So when I was a kid, if I came home with a bad test score and my parents wanted a meeting with the teacher, and this happened to me once, I specifically remember 7th grade, I got an F on an English test. I studied for it. I thought I was ready for it. And my mother wanted a meeting with this teacher. Now, if you were to do that right now, the expectation the teacher would have is I have a parent who's going to show up and yell at me about how I'm doing such a bad job with their kid and how could I fail their kid, and it must somehow be my fault as the teacher that their kid doesn't know what's going on. And the principal might end up getting involved, and then I have teacher friends who've been through this. But back then, as far as I know, there's no apprehension on the teacher side because they know if a parent's coming to talk to me about their kid getting F on one of my tests, the parent wants to know what their kid needs to do. And that's what the meeting was. The teacher showed up and basically explained to the teacher, okay, my kid clearly doesn't understand what you're looking for because he got an F. He's a bright kid. So if he knows what you're looking for, he should be able to do better in your class. But for whatever reason, he doesn't get it. Can you help me understand and help us understand so he knows what he needs to do differently? And so what was happening? All of us were teaming up against the F. The F was the problem. The F wasn't a weapon to bludgeon the teacher with, any more than it's a weapon to bludgeon the kid with. The F is the problem, not the weapon. And so, mom, teacher, and kid team up together to find out, why is this F here? What do we do to get rid of this in the future so it never has to happen again? And I don't remember all the details of the conversation, what it was, but I do remember getting some illumination, like, oh, that's what you're after, which was very different than what my 6th grade teacher was after. The 7th grade English teacher had a specific thing he was after that just hadn't clicked for me. I hadn't gotten it. But once I got it, now I can get A's. And I went on in that semester to get a perfect report card. Straight A's, straight E's, which was excellent. And I think now for my kids it's O for outstanding, but a perfect report card. Because I did straight A's after that one F. And that's part of the result of we teamed up against the F, rather than use the F as a weapon against one of the people we needed on our team. So you team up against the problems. When you have these inevitable problems, you always look for solutions to the problem. When you have inevitable challenges, always look to be a team to overcome the challenges. Now, quick definitions. A problem is something with a solution. A challenge is something that can be overcome. Now, to distinguish between a problem and a problem means if you fail to solve the problem, you lose. So fail to solve and lose. Solve and you're back even. Now think about the average, kids test. Think about elementary school. 10 questions. What's 2 plus 2? If you put 4, do you have extra points or do you avoid the -1? What do you put 5? Now you have a -1. And so the way you get through all of the problems, getting through the problems means that you end with no negatives. A challenge is you fail to overcome a challenge and you even. If you overcome the challenge, now you win. So you can think of it, problems are mandatory or you're going to lose. You have to solve the problems as they arise or you're going to lose. Challenges are things where if you solve the challenge, if you overcome the challenge, you win. You get ahead. Things are better. You've improved things. Not just avoided things going down, but you've gotten things to go up. And of course, something can be both. If you fail to lose, or if you fail, you lose, and if you succeed, you win. So they're both a problem and a challenge, and then you can use the vocabulary interchangeably. But just so we understand that there's these two categories, that this has to be solved, because if you don't solve it, things are going to be going bad. These are optional, but if you really want things to look great, you need to tackle these optional things. And an individual version of being on the same page, and you can do this, of course, as a couple, but obviously being on the same page implies teamwork. Teaming up against a problem involves teamwork, so you kind of need people for that. But even as an individual, here is a key. And you can do this as an individual, as a couple, as a team of any size. Create a compelling future. Create a compelling future. Not just a goal, a compelling future. Have a goal that creates a future that inspires you, that gets you up in the morning, that draws you through your day, that draws you through your work, not just begrudgingly, but with enthusiasm. And visit that future and the path to it often, knowing where you're going. Another individual version is know partners from opponents. Know who your partner is. Know who your opponent is. As an individual, you may not have built-in partners. Now, it's also sad that even as a married person or a member of a family, you still, unfortunately, may not always have built-in partners. But regardless, you need to know who your partners are. And you partner with your partners. Be a part of a mastermind if you can. Now, a mastermind can be a husband and wife. That's where you're both working jointly together toward this compelling future. And that your interaction, your focus, your conversation, your time, your emotional intensity and focus is directed at this compelling future. as part of a business mastermind, working with each other for ideas and inspiration and encouragement to take it to the next level and keep moving it forward and to get through your difficult times. And then to pursue whatever your next level is. And know who your opponents are. However well-meaning, you may have very well-meaning opponents, and keep your goals away from them. Now, what I mean by a well-meaning opponent, sometimes some of your closest family and closest friends, they want to protect you. They don't want you to get your hopes up and then be disappointed. And so they try to discourage you from doing what you're supposed to be doing. They try to discourage you from your vision because it's too big, it's too much. And very well, because they love you, they don't want to see you get hurt. They want to pull you back. Keep your goals away from these people. Now, some people aren't well-meaning. Sometimes it's the tribe thinking, or we call it crab barrel syndrome, where you think you're better than us, you think you can do this thing, and that you're going to leave us behind, and they'll pull you back down. Keep your goals away from those people for sure. Know who your opponents are. Well-meaning opponents, not well-meaning opponents. Keep your goals away from them. Don't expect opponents to be partners. And here's a hard one. And don't be surprised when partners can't seem to keep partnering. They may love you. They may want the best for you. But it's just hard for them to stay on the same page with you. It's just hard for them to keep being on your team, especially when things are going poorly. Especially sometimes when there's setbacks and it's painful. So you have to know your partners from your opponents. Now here's one of your most powerful techniques to achieve any goal. Hold tightly to the goal. Hold loosely to the plan. So if you create this compelling future, hold tightly to that compelling future. Hold tightly to that goal. This is what I'm after. Until you choose to change it. Until you decide a different goal is better. That a different goal, or maybe a smaller goal on the way to the bigger goal, that's what I'm going to hold on to. You change goals very intelligently. And very slowly. And you never change goals out of emotion. You're like, I give up. You don't do that. You hang on to it. It's like, I want to give up, but let me hang on until I no longer want to give up, and let me look at this intelligently. Let me look at this wisely. Maybe instead of having this vision for this month-long extended family and friends trip to Orlando that I want to pay for, that's going to be $80,000, maybe instead of jumping all the way to there, I'm going to set a smaller goal of maybe just a Disneyland trip for my immediate family. That I can achieve in a period of time that I can concretely plan for. That other one is great, I still want to do it, but it's so big and it's so distant that it's hard for me to hang on to what do I do today? What do I do this week to get there? So sometimes you decide that, okay, I need to grab a smaller goal and hang on to it, and that's okay. You just don't let go of a goal because, I give up. That's just pure emotion. But you hold tightly to the goal. And you hold loosely to the plan. Now, when you create a compelling future, hold that vision with positive passion. Hold it with energy and enthusiasm. And immerse yourself in it vividly and often. So the most successful people immerse themselves in their vision morning, noon, and night, 3 times a day. That they start their day there. Because that gets them to go to work. Because very often you don't enjoy the work. You may not enjoy the job. You may not enjoy the class. You may not enjoy the paper. You may not enjoy the test. But it's part of the process. But if you put it in context with what it is you're doing, where it is you're going, what it's going to get you, then all of a sudden the paper, the test, the class, the job is helpful. It's a tool. It's getting you where you want to go. You recognize the price that you're paying is going towards something instead of just you're paying a price. And if you immerse yourself in that morning, noon, and night, at least once a day, then that will help drive you with enthusiasm and passion and energy through your day. At the same time you energetically pursue your plan, hold loosely to it. Ask, how is this working out for me? And ask that question often enough so you can upgrade your plan at any time a new plan might work better. Always be on the lookout for a new plan. Always be on the lookout for better. Always be on the lookout for more effective. Always be on the lookout for a more powerful path. So for instance, you might have a job that you hate. And as you're going to this job that you really don't much care for, but you're actually excited about it because it's part of this larger plan, it's part of this larger vision. That as you're working your way through, an opportunity arises for a better job. Maybe a promotion at the same company. Maybe a cross job at a new company that may have some additional benefits. That in some way, shape, or form helps you toward your goal even better than the one that you've got. Well, just because your plan was, well, I'm going to do this job, I'm going to do this job for 2 years, this is going to make this much money, we're going to set aside this much money every month, we're going to pay off these debts, and we're going to build up these savings, so then we can spend it and we can go and do this trip. Well, you might be going, well, hey, if we get this new job, then we're going to have a little bit more money. If we keep our expenses the same, now we can save more money. Now we can get there even faster. Sometimes you can be in school and you're kind of chugging along and you've got your course plan all worked out and you realize as you're going through, it's like, this is so tough, but I just found out that they have a credit for life experience program. And I can get 3 units or 6 semester units for what I've already lived, what I've already done, the job that I've had. Well, I can drop 2 of these classes now and I can take an exam to show that this is what I've done, this is what I know, and now I can get there. Or for me, when I was doing some real estate, originally someone said, well, why don't you go get a real estate license? And I looked it up, what it took, and well, that was going to be a lot of work. But then I found out, hey, as a member of the state bar, as a licensed attorney, I'm allowed to sit for the real estate broker's exam. I may not know all the mortgage stuff, I may not know the real estate agency stuff, but because I'm a lawyer, I'm allowed to sit for the test. So instead of having to go take all of these classes, I can just take a prep course and go take the test and then become a real estate broker, which is what I did. Where the goal would not have been worth it if that was the price to pay. Class, exam, experience, class, another exam, credential. But because I go, prep course credential, that was worth it. That was worth taking the shot at that exam. And so you keep an eye out for better plans. Sometimes you keep your eye out for better goals. Sometimes you find out that if you tinker with your goals some, there's an even better way to do it that isn't going to cost you anything more. Sometimes maybe a little bit more. So I'm thinking about this grand vacation. Oh, I want to stay at this resort and find out, but wait a minute. So you're saying if I go stay at that resort, I have a full kitchen, I can go grocery shopping, and I can have as many breakfasts, lunches, and dinners in a condominium at a condominium resort. So now I don't have to get up in the morning and get dressed and leave to go have breakfast. I can just grab breakfast. So now if I want to be there for rope drop at Magic Kingdom, I don't have to get started at 5:30 in the morning. I can get started at 7 in the morning. Well, that sounds like a deal. And then all this money that I'm saving, because now I'm not having to buy every breakfast, every lunch, and every dinner out. Now we can have some really spectacular meals out. Now I can go book Cinderella's Castle. Now I can go book a sit-down dinner at Be Your Guest. Now we can go do some really spectacular things. Now we might even have some extra money. We'll go see the Cirque du Soleil show. We'll go see the Pirate show. We'll go see the Arabian Nights show. We'll go do this extra really cool stuff that wasn't originally part of the vision, because we're learning. Now, for those of you who've been to Orlando a lot, well, of course, Orlando has Universal Studios and Islands of Adventure, and that's where the Wizarding World of Harry Potter is. Well, I'll tell you, the very first time I went to Orlando, I didn't know all this other stuff was there. Like, not all of it was there the first time I went. But I just went to go see some of the Disney parks. And all I knew is that there were these big Disney parks. And I was going to need 4 days so I could go see the Disney parks. And so I set that time aside, and I went there, I did that. But while I was there, I was like, there's a lot of stuff here. I didn't know there was so much stuff here. And so the next time I said, okay, I need a week. It turned into I need 2 weeks. And to be able to switch things up and go do some different things and have a lot more fun. It's upgrading the goal. Upgrading the plan, changing what I'm doing, how I'm doing it, and what I'm after, as I learn more and better and more effective ways of doing it. And so just because you had a particular plan on how you're going to pull something off, if you hold loosely to the plan and you upgrade your plan, not because you have to because it's failing, but because you can, because there's a better way. And you can quit one job because you have another job. You can stop pursuing one resort because now you have a better resort. You can stop pursuing one exact way of doing it because now you have a better way to do it. And as you immerse yourself in these things, living a life of adventure is enjoying the process, even enjoying the price that you're paying, because you recognize what it says about you on your way to your goal. So suppose I take my family to Orlando. And you find, wow, that's a pretty big investment. So, yep, I worked hard to get them there. I worked on building my business and building my practice and working my cases and setting aside some money and invested it and made some more money with that until we had this fund built up so we could really go do it. Go, wow, that's really cool. Compared to, well, yeah, my mom gave me money and said, go. Now you can go, wow, that's really impressive of you. Or you can go, well, that's really impressive of your mom. Because now mom's the one that paid the price. That's part of the reason why we're not typically so impressed with people who inherit great wealth, but we're very impressed with people who earn great wealth. And the people who earn great wealth by providing a great value, so we don't feel like they're ripping anybody off, but they've served greatly, and they've taken the risk, and they've put in the hours and the work, and they got there. Those millionaires and multimillionaires, decamillionaires, those we have great respect for. The ones who just inherited the money, and they kind of hang out all day, and they play all day, and they're kind of just famous for being famous, and they don't really do anything. We tend to not have as much admiration for, because they haven't given us that much to admire. And so a lot of times that price that we pay is just for our own self-respect. So if I went to school and I just went surfing every single day, and in 4 years they hand me a degree, and I go, well, what'd you learn? Well, nothing. I just never went to class. So we just gave them tuition and hung out and went surfing and partying and went down to TJ for the clubs and the parties until I was 21, and hit the clubs and parties here, and then you just hang out for 4 years and they give you a degree. You go, wow, that's really impressive. Versus, my friend who graduated from MIT and was telling me about how, every waking moment was focused on school and how much they were just hungry for the breaks, because even the weekends weren't a break for them. And when they got their spring break and their winter break and the summer, they go, okay, I can catch my breath, I can get settled in and be ready to hit the ground running at the beginning of the next semester. And then they get a degree and they know some stuff. Now you're impressed. As opposed to someone who would spend all their time partying and would just at some school that would just give you a degree because they got 4 years of tuition. And so sometimes that price that gets paid is part of what gives value to the goal. Going to work at the job that maybe you didn't like, but it was the best job available that got you here. And that the self-respect you can have when you look at yourself in the mirror and say, yeah, you're a man. Yeah, you're a woman. Yeah, you're tough. You see what you handled and how well you handled that? That's awesome. You have a strength and a power and a resilience here. If you can handle that, you can handle anything. And sometimes the things that we allow ourselves to voluntarily go through to get to these goals, that sets up the self-respect. That sets up the sense of that powerful resilience, because some things you don't get a choice. I mean, when my dad died, I didn't have a choice. I had to be able to go through that. You know, when you lose a family member, you lose a good friend, when you lose a job, stuff happens to people, and you have no choice but to be strong. But where you get to practice is where you do have a choice, and you go be strong. You go be resilient. You go make the decision that gives you legitimate reason to respect yourself. To look in the mirror and say, you're an adult. You're powerful. You are a royal knight. You are a warrior. You can handle it. And all of a sudden, more and more goals get to be achievable. But I mean, think about it. How old did you have to be to learn to whine? We're kind of practically born with that skill, aren't we? And unfortunately, modern culture seems to be cultivating just more sophisticated adult levels of whining, which is sad, but we do it. And it's not like it's new, because if you can read scripture and see that, yeah, you know, some of that's been around pretty much forever. But it's so epidemic these days. You look around and go, you know, you're just doing a 25-year-old's version of a 2-year-old's whining. And you have to wonder, what are you going to be able to achieve that way? You want other people to constantly do stuff for you and practically to coddle you. And that's not the way life is supposed to work. You can't count it pure joy when you encounter diverse trials if you have to hide from competing opinions. If it hurts your feelings too much when things aren't going exactly according to some fantasy you have in your head. I want us to live lives of adventure. You know, adventures can be tough. If you ever played any kind of adventure game, you want to run into stuff. If you're playing a video game and nothing is happening, you just go wandering around. No puzzles to solve, no enemies to overcome. You just wander around and you look at things. Most people wouldn't find that an exciting game. You're not going to be selling hundreds of thousands and millions of copies of a game like that. But when you're playing a game, it's by facing the challenges is how you level up. It's by facing the challenges, overcoming the puzzles, overcoming the enemies and the opponents. By doing the hard stuff is how you level up, how you get your points, how you get your treasure, how you get your equipment, how you get whatever it is that's winning for that game. And this whole idea of facing the hard stuff in the game to win the game is practically addictive in the game. Well, we could do the same thing in real life and seek out adventure. Know what winning the game is for us by having that compelling future, having the plan, being on the same page if you have a partner, teaming up with your partner or with your partners, with your family, with your spouse, against the problems. The problems are there to be solved. The problems are not the weapon to beat your partner with, as now you're an opponent. The problems are there to be solved as a team. And know who your partners are. And partner with your partners. As you seek to live a life of adventure, as we begin to go in next time into, okay, so how do we set these kind of goals? How do we craft a compelling future? What does this look like? How do you do it? Sounds like it could be fun. I think it is fun. I love this stuff. So next time, creating a compelling future and crafting a plan to get there. We're going to start in on that as we seek to choose the adventures. Too much of life is adventures that are thrust upon us. Let us go live adventures of our own choosing and live that life of adventure. Thank you.